industry. That story continues also on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. And fake gold case continues. Businessman Jared Kiasa Otieno and his co-accused Philip Nation Aroko and Robert Paul Owiti can be seen here when they appeared at the Milimani Law Courts yesterday, charged with conspiracy to defraud Southern, that is Chadhan Vong, a director of Simuong Group Company, of 300 million shillings by alleging they could sell him gold. They denied the charges and were remanded until Monday for the ruling on the bail application. You can follow this story also inside the Business Daily as well. KQ boasts earns 62.8 million shillings in year of 7.5 billion shillings loss. Remember, this is a requirement from the Capital Markets Authority that they will be declaring their salaries. And Kenya Airways, it says here, Chief Executive Sebastian Mikosh was paid a total of 62.8 million shillings last year, indicating average earnings of 5.2 million shillings per month for the boss of a loss-making national carrier. And this from the Capital Markets, of course, that is the governance codes requires that, yes, if the CEO of a company is, or if the company is not really doing well as far as the finances is concerned, then also that increment should not be there. But this is not the subject that we can see here as well. You can follow the story on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. 21 billion shillings Lamu wind project in limbo is another story you can follow. That is a story by Kalume Kazungu on page 4 also of the Business Daily, where it continues this morning. Let's see what we have across the border. We go to Tanzania and see what the Citizen is holding for us this morning. Why state-run telco needs 1.7 trillion shillings. Board Chairman Nundu says 67% of the sum will be spent on increasing mobile subscription. Then the rest will improve landline services. This story continues on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. We want our mobile subscription market share to reach 15% in 5 years. This is what Nundu says, the TTCL board chairman. Also, we can see a standalone picture. President John Magufuli receiving a dummy check of 2.1 billion shillings from TTCL Chief Executive Officer Waziri Kindamba. Is a related picture on what is a related picture on what is the splash on the front page of the Citizen this morning. Also, ministry drops 10 levies on milk and meat. The government is scrapping off 10 different fees and charges on milk production, transportation and marketing, as well as on meat and fish products, as it seeks to boost investments in the sector. Where to go? And you can follow the story on page 3 of the Citizen. Call for plastic bags damp sites is another story on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Still there we have Mwananchi as well, and this is your splash. Mbinu kuepuka jela ya siku 7 na faini ya 30,000 mifuko plastiki. That is a story you can follow on page 3 of Mwananchi as well. Also, wiki ya simanzi vifo vitano nchini, and this is what is happening there in Tanzania. You can see the faces. Let me try and expand that for you. There you go. That is Ali Juma Shamhuna, Hassan Gwinzi, and it says also we have the picture of Thomas, that is Thomas Molel and Tamimu Ferej. It says here, hii ni wiki ya majonzi. Tanzania imepoteza watu 5 maarufu kwa nyakati tofauti ndani ya siku 4. And you can read the rest of the details on page 4 of Mwananchi in Tanzania. Well, it seems I'll be struggling with this a bit here. This is what we do have on the front page of Mwananchi in Tanzania. Let's cross over now to Uganda and see what we have on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Mbarara, Arua, Jinja, Gulu to become cities is a splash today. The 4 and Fort Portal start in 2020. The 4 and Fort Portal start in 2020. The story continues on page 6 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. And we can see President agrees on 35 billion shillings for parties. This is President Museveni. Can be seen arriving for the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue iPod Summit at Poti Hotel in Entebbe on Monday. He was received by the IPOD chairperson, who is also the President General of the Democratic Party, Mr. Norbert Mao, and other party members. You can follow this story on page 4 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Oulanya blasts Finance Minister over budget mess. That story continues on page 5. And I can't allow police tags in my house. This is what Minister Ntaba, she's saying. You can follow the story also inside the Daily Monitor today. Lake Albert death toll rises to 16. That story continues on page 3. And also Mubende Kagadi Road boost trade. That is on Regional Extra Pullet Magazine inside the Daily Monitor. If you're waking up in Uganda, let's see what we have in Rwanda. And this is the splash today. If you're waking up in Rwanda, why joining OECD Center is big deal. Rwanda's membership to the OECD Development Center will help the country improve its development policies and share on experience with other member states, according to experts. You can follow that story. That is Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and that is what we have here as a splash on the front page of the Daily. This is the New Times in Rwanda. Right, I want to show you also what we have as the editorial cartoons. That is, we do have here inside the Daily Nation and the Standard as well. Well, it seems it's acting up. I'll show you the editorial cartoons much later in the course of the program, so that you can see also what we'll be discussing as well. Technology sometimes fails me early in the morning, but of course I think I've given you enough of the dailies today, save for the editorial cartoons and the pictures from our archives as well. But for now, let's swing for the fences by looking at the highlights. Jared Otieno and 15 other suspects remain in custody. In Malawi, polls close in tough election for President Mutharika. And Iraq sending teams to Tehran, Washington, to try to calm tensions. This is according to the Prime Minister. Now, officers from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations flew to Dubai to record statements from Ali Zandi, the representative of the United Arab Emirates royal family, over the 400 million shillings gold scam. Investigators will be seeking to interrogate Zandi on those involved in the gold syndicate, specifically to Khan Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. Zandi's statement is expected to help guide the police on who to summon for questioning. NTV's Mel Muyando starts us off.
Detectives' search for evidence has seen them head to Dubai, where gold that was paid for never got delivered. Ali Zandi, the man who represents the UAE royal family that was conned 400 million shillings, is the key person DCI detectives want to talk to. He has reportedly been to Kenya several times. Interestingly, Zandi is also a representative of Z Livia Company, a gold trading company based in Dubai. The company complaining of missing gold. Zahir Janda, a Kenyan politician, claims to be among the owners of the company.
We are being tagged names which doesn't belong to us. I have absolutely never done business of gold in my life. Actually, this is my first time doing the gold business. And I am actually a shareholder in the company that is alleging, that is a complainant. I'm a stakeholder with 12% shares in Z Livia.
The Dubai mission is expected to fill in missing gaps for detectives and inform their course of action on who to summon for recording of statements that will inform decisions on charges to prefer. Persons of interest in the fake gold scam are Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula, politician Zahir Janda, and UAE family representative Ali Zandi. Janda, who had told the media that he would present himself to the DCI headquarters, is yet to do so. Wetangula, on the other hand, is out of the country in Hong Kong for the International Anti-Corruption Conference, where he's one of the Senate's representatives. On Monday night, detectives raided a residential area in Riara where they discovered a gold smelting center. Unsuspecting businessmen were lured to the house and swindled off their money. The tenant of the house, Abdul Rashid, was not in the house when the raid occurred and is said to have escaped once he got wind of the operation. he is a wanted man. A team of detectives is also investigating officials at the Kenya Airports Authority, Mines and Geology Department who are said to be part of the cartel. Meanwhile, 16 suspects arrested in the fake gold syndicate, including Jared Otieno, will spend another 7 days in police custody. The 16 who appeared before Chief Magistrate Francis Andai were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and obtaining money through false pretense. Lawyers representing the suspects applied for bail and bond terms, which the prosecution did not deny, but there were arguments that the 16 were from different social backgrounds and whether lenient terms will be given. It will be until the 28th of May when this case will be mentioned here at the Milimani courts, but until the 1st of July is when the case will begin its hearing. Mel Miendo, NTV, Milimani Law Courts.
Right, we want to hear from our panelists this morning as well, as far as this diplomacy, or not, I wanted to say diplomacy. A tip of a tongue there. This is a tough diplomacy between now Kenya and Dubai as far as this fake gold scam is concerned. And we understand, yes, as far as that story goes, that we have detectives who've flown now to Dubai. We want to hear from our panelists this morning. What does it portend, especially on the diplomacy front? Ali had introduced to you a panelist who are already in studio with us. We have with us Dr. Werunga Simiyu. Also, we have with us Dr. Hassan Khanenje. We have Dr. Tusen Muhuruli. And also we have Ambassador Erastus Mwenche and Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali. We continue with the conversation. Let's just begin from Werunga on this particular gold scam. And as far as diplomacy is concerned, we have many Kenyans living in Dubai. And this goes to show that this very nefarious stuff that really happens in this country as far as gold is concerned, as far as maybe minerals is concerned. So this is just a tip of the iceberg.
I think I want to look at it in 3-4 parts. One, as a diplomatic issue. Two, as an organized crime thing. And three, as a cancer in this country that has been on for a very long time. So first, I think from a diplomatic perspective, one, I don't know why this is becoming a national issue, because this is personal business between...
It's private business.
Yes, private business between the sheikh and some characters in this country. Now, slowly they've turned it into a national issue because our useless politicians have decided to make it a national issue, because it was a purely criminal issue to be dealt with the security organs in this country. And the sheikh, even if he wrote to this government asking for assistance, it was purely on a personal level. Now, because of our charlatans in politics, they decided to make this thing a national issue between Kenya and Dubai. That is my view. And we have bought it, the media has bought into that, and it has now become an issue between Kenya and UAE. To me, that is very wrong, and that is why we keep on perpetuating these fellows in politics. And I want to ask Kenyans, you know, there's a difference between a political leader and a person holding a position of political leadership. You know, those are two different human beings.
Yes.
Because if this guy, we like calling them leaders, but I think we have a deficiency of leaders in this country. What we have are characters holding positions of leadership, and they purport to be leaders in this country. Because Debarl, to be very honest, this was not meant to be a national problem between Kenya and UAE. The Sheikh of Dubai asked the government of Kenya to assist him in his individual capacity, not as the head of Dubai. Because the issue of the gold was between him as an individual doing business in gold, working with syndicates in this country and syndicates in the DRC. So to me, that's how we need to look at this issue. And we must stop this fact that now people are taking advantage of this business and making it a national problem between Kenya and Dubai, which is not, to me, I think, the right thing to do. Number two, we must look at this thing as this scam business has been in this country for a long time. And therefore, it must be seen as part of an international syndicate on crime.
Yes.
You see, fake gold in this country has been there. We've been reading about it for a very long time. Fake gold, fake diamonds, fake sugar, fake rice. All these things are about organized crime in this country. And therefore, I'll ask these people in politics to leave the security organs to deal with this issue so that we stop wasting Kenyan people's time. We took them to parliament to give us laws. We took them to parliament to give us legislation that makes this country a better place to live in. But they are now talking about Matiang'i, they are talking about everybody else, and you can see it is angling on politics, and yet CID and the Director of Criminal Investigations and the DPP are looking at this thing as a criminal act. So, Debarl, I think to me, we shouldn't put a lot of time on this because it doesn't merit. Let security organs deal with this thing as a crime. Unfortunately, now Kenya has to deal with this thing as a diplomatic issue. But I think at the end of the day, it was personal business of Sheikh Maktoum and those fellows who are saying they are partners in this business. And then probably involve the Interpol to deal with this syndicate that seems to be making Kenya the center, and yet they operate from Central African Republic, Kenya as a transit region, and then to the rest of the world. That is my view.
All right, and of course we can see how it's spinning off so many things as far as also our dailies are concerned. Looking at the Standard, there's also the storm that is building over MP's bid to oust Matiang'i. We can just take, you know, a snapshot of what is on the front page of a Standard. Yeah. That is what we do have here. Storm builds over MP's bid to oust Matiang'i. This is in relation to actually this particular story, which you say, according to it, is very private, but now people are politicizing it, and they want to get political expediency from this as well. Let's hear from Ambassador Erastus Mwencha.
Thank you, Debarl, and I think Virunga has spoken, and we've been missing him. He's sharpshoot, and welcome, my brother.
Especially last Wednesday, we missed you on the choppers as well, that we were discussing the Augusta choppers.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
I want to build on what you have said, how politicians, you know, I was looking at this, particularly over the weekend, how politicians took advantage of this story to tear down each other. It's like, you know, we have hunters in a game park looking for an opportunity to shoot. And you can see that even before the story unfolds, because it was already in the hands of security personnel, they are already making conclusions. And when you look at the optics of who has been with who, you get confused. But I think, as he has rightly mentioned, we are creating a very dangerous presidency for the country in terms of politics, where we are not looking at each other in a genuine manner, but hunting each other in a very vicious manner. Look at the history of minerals in Africa. You have the blood diamond and all these, and we know there are organized crimes which do it. In fact, from EU, Africa, and the UN, there is now a protocol in place to make sure that any of these precious minerals, if they are being sold, you must identify the origin. And that is something that is very important for us to bear in mind. So you obviously can see, I mean, from the boxes when they opened it, you would see it looks like gold. But then you hear the word background is fake. That worries me. Having said that, I think, to me, and as he rightly mentioned, this is a gang that is organized. This is a crime that is in the hands of securities. I hope, I have seen some write-up somewhere, people saying, sometimes you are told it is fake so that it disappears in the background. That's the only worry I have. The rest I'm not worried, because all these things that have been said, oh, we have fake currency, it disappears. We don't know where that is. I think we must come out clear and open it, have the people certify that this is fake, so that this thing is demystified. Otherwise, I fully concur, this is a crime. Let's handle it with criminals, and let politicians stay out of it, because we know when they jump on it, it is because there is something they want to hide.
All right. Dr. Toussey.
Very quickly, really, and I think my colleagues have already said it all, the whole issue of supply chain, you know, to look at where the gold is coming from and the way it is ending the market, is something really that needs to be addressed. I believe, first of all, I would like to say that there is a story that is unfolding in the DRC currently, where former government spokesperson and Minister of Communication has been arrested on a scam of holding 87 carat of diamonds, and the investigation are going on. So what I want to say, and to just link the two issues here, is to say that what we are seeing is the kind of money laundering, in which case you can fabricate a story, you give it a kind of public, acceptance, in this case the gold, but really the money behind, no one can trace it and know where the money is exactly. So as my colleague said and emphasized before me, it is really an organized crime that should be handled as a security issue, and the government should do something of that nature, not simply to disrupt, say, the kind of diplomatic ties or relations between countries. So can we let this issue be dealt with by the security? That's the question. Yeah.
Are we likely to see this private sort of business also escalating,
Correct.
as far as you're saying, to a diplomatic row between Kenya and Dubai? That is also another problem question that we should be asking. I think that's what you're actually trying also to say this morning as well. Dr. Hassan from NJ.
Good morning, Debarl.
Good morning to you.
First of all, this is not a diplomatic issue. This is a criminal issue for the government. Now, two, when you elect to engage private citizens in business and you get ripped off, you do not hold the whole country responsible for that. Unless that individual was an official representative of that government, let's say Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they came as such. Outside that, that's actually private business that should not have diplomatic implications, ideally. Three, what we see is also a symptom of a larger problem we have in this country. Our obsession with wealth, shortcuts, and endemic corruption. And if we do not move in this direction, because today we are talking about fake gold. Just a few months ago, we had lots of fake currencies, running into billions of shillings, literally. Now, if we do not move and handle this criminally and make sure we actually put in place mechanisms so people don't sell mallets, lying to potential unsuspecting buyers that this is gold, the problem of counterfeit, fake things, and shortcut is going to continue. Now, the danger for us is we're setting ourselves up then as a country to become a center for international organized crime. Because if they think they can get away with it, then I promise you, they are going to set camp in Kenya. Now, the challenge as a country when it comes to the political discourse is just watching television and reading newspapers in the last few days, you will think corrupt people are trying to outcompete each other in calling the other to see who is more corrupt. Like, well, no, you accuse me of stealing bananas, but apparently you're being accused of stealing potatoes. How about that? We should stop this childishness, this just bad manners. We look really bad in front of the entire world when engaged in this pettiness, and somehow we're covering up for things, or we're glossing over issues that are actually serious and likely to affect the country. So this should be handled as a crime and should be addressed as such, but we should not let it escalate diplomatic levels. But part of the problem is because we have tens of thousands of Kenyans who actually work in the Middle East. And you know that some countries that are known for, like 419 number in Nigeria, for instance, some of the countries out there, they've imposed visa restrictions on some of their citizens. Why? Because of such bad manners. We should stop this bad behavior, and when we see it, we need to call it out. But I don't think this is a diplomatic issue. This is a criminal issue between an individual from a foreign country who just happens, of course, to serve in government, and a private citizen of Kenya. And that is the way I think it should be approached.
Right. Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Debarl, thanks. The challenge here is, and I agree with my colleagues, it should not have actually become a diplomatic, I think you already said diplomatic tiff in the beginning. The people who are involved in this have actually been name dropping, and they dropped the name of the president, of the interior minister, and that's why it became, and it shouldn't have gone in that direction, something, or rather a diplomatic tiff. Now, Debarl, I spoke to a reliable source 2 days ago in the DRC, and he told me that Let us not be surprised. This is not the only time this is happening. This has been going on for years. And the challenge here for Kenya today, and this is coming out very clearly, is that our politicians, at least some of them, are now effectively involved in an international crime ring and gang. And so the country has to deal with these politicians and the so-called traders who have actually been doing this for some time. It's not the first time that they are engaged in selling mallets and steal stuff purporting to be gold. And what this means is that some of these people who happen to be leaders in this country are actually endangering the prospects of Kenyans who are very much respected out there. There are 35,000, minimum of 35,000 Kenyans in Dubai alone. And Kenyans out there are respected for their hard work. Now, what will those people think about Kenyans because of one or two or three politicians who have been name-dropping? What will they think about those Kenyans who are honest and are doing their work? The bigger challenge here, Debarl, that is security in nature, is that Nairobi is now becoming a center and a hub of international criminal gangs operating from here and taking gold, illegal gold as it were, because I don't think that gold was sanctioned, or the fake gold that continued to come through Nairobi. And that means that all these bad eggs from Eastern Europe, and there are a few countries that when you mention them, two things come into mind: guns and minerals. They are camping in Nairobi here. And the security agencies have got to dismantle this ring as soon as they can.
So, in a sense, Nairobi is aiding and abetting, international crime as it is.
Yeah, I think we need to look at the history of this city. You remember there was a time the former president of Zaire, DRC, paid an unscheduled visit to Kenya, that is Kabila.
Yes.
And the issue was of 8 tons of gold that had disappeared from somewhere.
They could not be traced, yes.
It could not be traced. And for a president to make an unscheduled visit to another country, then I believe that gold was genuine. But you see, we were never told what happened to that gold, because he didn't get his gold, but we were never told where the gold went. So what we are trying to say here is that this city has become the center of fake things. Fake, like Ambassador said, so that it disappears, but it was genuine. So in essence, what they are doing is they're doing contraband business, and they're also doing money laundering. And at the end of the day, they want to draw in the name of Dr. Matiang'i, because Matiang'i probably has refused to play ball. And there's also an issue, I think, when the president made him the head of the ministry or whatever, some fellows in politics think that probably his star is still coming. It is rising. Now, that is the danger that this country, and that's why I was a bit bitter when I started speaking, because we are getting politicians in this country who want to politicize everything, Debarl. And yet, us as Kenyans, we have no problem with Dubai, we have no problem with DRC, and we want to make these things come out as if Kenya is full of criminals, and yet we are not. Yeah. So my suggestion will be, especially the media.
Yes.
You see, when you pick up these useless stories from people who are participating in politics and make it headlines, I know I can't change you, but at least I can say, saying is free. You see, when you pick such a useless stories like a storm building over Matiang'i, about what? Because Dr. Matiang'i is doing his work as a Minister for Interior, and he has an obligation to this country to ensure that anything that is within the security realm of this country, it has to be handled. And when I listened to that audio, for those who listened, I remember the person on the other side was saying he was dealing with this issue as the minister in charge of security. How many have heard of that audio? Yes, he was, and he repeated, and not in another form, but as the minister. So people are turning that thing to want us to believe that they were saying Matiang'i was part of this gang. I think it is not right, it is not correct, and we urge Dr. Matiang'i Mr. Kinoti, DPP, they've been called names before, but let them continue doing their work, because this country, we must read these pretenders in leadership so that we get the right people to lead this country. Those who want to join politics, they must deal with crime in this country and do it very well, so that this Kenya, from where we stand, a very respected country, until even the EU has now given us the second biggest embassy in the world, and you know, US has also has the biggest embassy in Africa, it shows Kenya has something. But these people want to mess our name because of very petty politics in this country because of 2022. I think as a country, we must stop, and we should not allow this to happen. And people must go out and speak against this, because otherwise, we shall be losing our name.
All right. Unless there is anything that you want to add on this, we can now actually move on. Ambassador Erastus Mwencha?
Well, I think there is not much addition to make, but I think there is a point we want to underline here, that there are many good Kenyans, and you can have a few people who go in the name of Kenya and tarnish the whole name of the country. And as a country, I sometimes ask myself, when I listen to that video clip which was doing rounds, to me, I mean, you would ask, it leaves you with more questions than answers.
Yes.
And I ask myself, what is the media's responsibility when you drop such big names? When you haven't done good background check. I thought I would see a background check saying, we have found this video, how it was recorded. I mean, even the evidence of video which are not allowed in the court, it is essentially on that somebody can stage manage something like that. And I was asking myself, who even released this to the media? What was the reason? I am not going to be asking, because I'm sure that is what Kinoti and Dim are doing. But the point I want to stress here is that let us not project an image of a country that is, you know, vice-ridden with criminals, when actually the rest of the world looks at that differently,
right.
And when we have many good Kenyans
But
going about their business. Right?
You raise an important question that I think also has been there, abiding question since on Monday and Tuesday on this of course, program as well. The question of how secure are our conversations.
Yes.
You say who actually, you know, leaked this to social media, and it seems there is the issue of wiretapping, phone bagging in this country that is still ongoing. Earlier on, we had a bill that, yes, people, I think was from the Communications Authority, that I think was quashed by Parliament because we're seeking actually to now get that legal, you know, latitude to listen to our conversations as well. But our conversations are not secure. Yeah. Dr. Susey?
Well, before I address that, I wanted to come back to some of the issues that have been raised. And I believe the way the media is helping us really to frame some of these issues is part of the media's role, if I may repeat myself. Just to say, we would not be having this conversation now if the media did not maybe, you know, pull us into the conversation. And it tells us maybe we need to broaden the framework of interpretation of the issue. I'm glad actually Dr. Irung was mentioning, you know, the case of Kabila traveling to Kenya at some point.
Yes.
If authorities of our countries at that level of responsibility would be involved in issues of this nature, it tells you that to some extent we have a bigger problem, and that problem could be moral also. It could be a problem of accountability at the same time. It could be a problem of, you know, who owns what and how. And that is part of the conversation that we should be having. I think my colleague said this before, Kenya has a beautiful reputation out there, and if everybody is trying to come into Kenya to say the UN, you know, offices, the EU embassy that has just been opened, this speaks volumes about the country's reputation to some extent. And we have to agree that if this is becoming national conversation, it's because that national interest of the country is at stake. It is, you know, the reputation of Kenya as a nation, of Kenya as a country, but also of Kenyans living outside. How is this having repercussions on their ways of being accepted within those communities or living, just, you know, having access to some other opportunities. So I think it is really a moral issue that we should be, you know, conversing about.
Right, Dr. Mustafa?
Yeah, Debarl, I think it was this week or was it late last week? The entire government of Austria actually resigned. And the reason why they resigned, one of the far-right parties or the center-right parties that was in charge in government, the deputy prime minister or the deputy leader of that country was seen and recorded with a dodgy businessman discussing a business deal. Discussing, not the deal didn't go through. Discussing a business deal, and they were put to task. The entire government resigned. Here you have all the who is who in that transnational criminal gang with the who is who in these leaders, politicians in this country, on pictures, on set, and guess what? They are still serving. They haven't even said a word. Tells you what kind of a country and leaders we have. Yeah.
All right, Dr. Hassan Hanenje, finally on this.
I think we've done sufficient justice, but it is true that, you know, the media helps us frame the debate and the discourse in the country. And I think sometimes we should choose our stories, you know, carefully, but also know who to give prominence to. Because I think increasingly lately, people who've been heard more on this has been politicians. And they're either on one camp or the other camp. They're not really assisting us as a country to understand what is actually going on. Neither are they trying to provide a way forward. So I think in the process of framing stories and what is important to the country, I think the media also has a role. And please don't give so much prominence to politicians because they waste a lot of our time and then eat a lot of our money.
All right, let's also drill deeper to other conversations of matter security. And 15 people have been arrested in connection to the Matungu killings in Kakamega County after the latest attack on a minor by an unknown attacker stunned area residents and the police. Security chiefs were locked in a day-long meeting with the pressure to stop the bizarre killings of villagers. The county government is opposed to the deployment of GSU officers, as residents claim the security operation is poorly coordinated. NTV's Zacchaeus Wasame has more.
A day after the stabbing to death of a 7-year-old boy in Matungu, a lengthy security meeting chaired by the Western Region Coordinator came out defending a shaky security operation in the area.
Wale maofisa ambao wamekaa wamedumu sana kwa hii region and especially katika hii county, tayari tumetayarisha majina yao na tunangojea tu marching orders, watakuwa replaced.
Ngetich claims the security operation in Matungu has made strides in smoking out the attackers and the brazen attacks will end soon.
15 suspects and some of them were even appearing in court today. All I can say in as far as the operation is concerned, apprehension of criminals, is that there is progress and we are making headway. We are actually expecting some breakthroughs.
Several police officers who have overstayed in the region have been transferred as security chiefs try every method to stop the violence. But the local Nyumbakumi representatives and village elders have complained that they have not been involved in intelligence gathering and security operations.
Raia sisi ingelikuwa serikali inatuhusisha sisi raia, tungelikuwa tunaona kwamba haya maneno yangeliisha. Kwa sababu askari ametoka kule Nairobi ama ametoka Naivasha, amekuja amevaa suti. Hata atapoingia hapa sokoni wananchi, watu wote watamkimbia.
Watu wazima ambao wanapiga kura ni zaidi ya 40,000. Na polisi wenye wako hapa wapiti 25. Na wanalinda watu 48,000. Ukiangalia upana kutoka Torofu na mpaka kufikia Munami, hao watu 24 wanaweza linda.
The death of Malik Moi as 31 people has brought the number of those killed to 15 in 1 month. Zacchaeus Masame, NTV, Kakamega.
Also interesting editorial cartoon in today's Daily Nation. This is all about the Matungi killings as well. And we can see Inspector General of Police here, Mutiambai, right, in that particular What do you normally call it? This I normally see it with the charity
It's a rotary
sweepstake.
drum.
Yeah, a rotary drum, yes. And so the names are being picked out from the rotary drum. Echesa, Malala, all of them are flying. And we can see police narrow down on politicians linked to Matungu killings. And we would just want also to pose this to you. Also yesterday we had this particular editorial cartoon by Stano, that is inside the People Daily. This is what he had drawn still regarding, not this one, let me try and pick the correct one. That is still regarding the killings in Matungu. So they're raising accusatory fingers. That is the police and the politicians as well. And we've seen some of the politicians were locked, and yes, other politicians came out in force to defend their own as well. Our man syndrome came to the fore. But Dr. Wirunga Simi, you think the deployment of a GSU was premature, so to speak?
Okay, from where I stand, I think it was premature, but there must be reasons why the minister decided to deploy these people. My view will have been that relating to how we police ourselves in this country these days, we believe in intelligence-led policing. And you see, if community policing has been entrenched in our laws as the alternative form of policing in this country, then even as the civilians are talking about, I think they have a point, although they don't seem to understand exactly how it is supposed to be done. So my view is that probably the minister felt that to suppress what is happening now, let me deploy the GSU, but not as the ultimate solution to the problem, but as a stopgap, so that whatever is happening as we get into the details of what needs to be done, at least we have some semblance of order in Matungu so that the police can now do their work properly. But this is my problem, Debarl. When you look at the national security architecture of this country, let's start from the lowest. We have an assistant chief. We have a chief. And that assistant chief, there are many in a location, is not one. We have a chief. We have an assistant county commissioner, formerly the DOs, until we get to the sub-county, where there's a DC and then the county. At every level, we have an intelligence representative.
Yes.
At every level of what I'm talking about. Now, why should this country wait for the minister to go to the ground and give instructions for police GSU to be deployed when he has been given structures and organs of government to protect the Kenyan people? When you read executive orders, the president has delegated his national security duties, not responsibilities, duties to his people under the county government, under the national, they're called NGAO, National Security Administrative whatever officers. Now, if you look at the totality of how this country is covered in the security manner, I do not understand how these kind of things can be happening in a very small area called Matungu, where my friend comes from. A very small area that is covered by everybody in the national security system. And yet it is the minister who has to go to Matungu to try and mollify what is happening on the ground. So my problem is this. For how long will Kenyans be crying about security, yet the government pays state officers to ensure that the areas are safe and secure? For how long shall we be having people in uniform in Matungu, in Kakamega, who are supposed to be securing the lives and properties of Kenyans, yet they have to wait for the minister to go on the ground? So I think this is my recommendation. First, it is not about transferring somebody, because if he has failed in Matungu, he's going to fail where you are taking this fellow. Interdict this fellow, do some investigations why these things are happening, and if they are found culpable, sack them. Because this country has this behavior of somebody failing here, and then you take him somewhere. What makes you think is going to be more effective where you are taking this fellow? So I think the idea, if we want to achieve what we want to achieve, interdict this fellow, do investigations why they failed in their responsibilities and duties as government security officers, and deal with them from that perspective. So my problem is very simple. Dr. Matiang'i is being asked to do what he's not supposed to do. because people are supposed to report to him. By the time you get to the minister, the chain is about 9 levels. Why should it be the responsibility of our minister to go to Matungu when we have people in uniformed band paid by the government who are supposed to work with the Kenyan people through community policing to ensure that the areas are safe and secure? Then lastly, Dr. Matiang'i leaves Matungu, and 2-3 days a child is killed. What does that tell you? That even if the ministers come, we are doing our things. And it gives a very bad picture for this country. So my suggestion to Inspector General, I've never met him, I mean officially as an Inspector General, let this country start working through intelligence-led policing. And that means you become proactive as opposed to being reactive. When you are using the people, when you are using your systems, it means you are able to get some things before they happen. You are not going to eliminate every crime in this country, but at least if you become very proactive, then it means that crime incidences will go down.
Thank you. Well, we need to take a short break right now. When we circle back, of course, we continue the discussion with our panelists here. And we'll peel back the layers and try and see what is the genesis of these flare-ups in Matungu as well. And what is fulminating this? Are politicians truly involved? And what is the way forward as far as security is concerned? And of course, we want to hear from you as well. You can head over to our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. Don't go away. also we do have with us the director of the Horn Institute. This is Dr. Hassan Kanenje. We have also Dr. Tusain Murhula, who is a senior lecturer at the Kima Peace Study and, of course, Ekima Institute of Peace Studies and International Affairs. We do have with us as well Ambassador Erastus Mwencha, who is the chairman of African Capacity Building Foundation and also is the chair of Trademark East Africa and former deputy chair of the African Union. Also, we do have with us Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is a peace and conflict resolution expert. We continue with the discussion on Matungu, where there is a flare-up, and earlier on, before we took a short break, we were actually posing this particular question: what is fomenting these tensions, and why are the flare-ups right now? What is instigating these tensions? And I think we left. It was at your actually, Dr. Werunga, that now it is Dr. Hassan Kanenje. Let's just hear from you. And he says that this is actually your area. Is that true? Maybe you can give us an intel. The origin.
Yes, but I think anytime you have communal conflicts or killings, as they say, all politics is local, and all village killings and murders, they tend to be local. Mm-hmm. So the local dynamics are actually informing that. And I think people who live there know that and understand that. Now, I think, was it Dr. Werunga, you're talking about intelligence-led policing. This is not something that you're going to react to when it happens. It is something you need to use the community to collect sufficient intelligence because people know who are involved. But sometimes because of lack of or fear of exposure, they are unwilling to come forward. In part because these gangs, just like Mungiki, tend to be very organized and tend to be extremely intimidating. So while people may have information on what is happening, they may not actually come forth. It's only the other day that we had in a different forum with regard even to the kidnappings in Mandera, that actually local people, it was done while people were watching. You know, people were there in the middle of town. So it means people know. But if citizens are not empowered sufficiently to be able to come forth, but knowing that if they do that, they're going to be protected against these gangs, they're going to be unwilling to do that. So this is a local problem, and I think the security agencies should approach it as such. However, it is true, and I agree with my colleague, this is not really, wasn't a problem for Matiang'i. You know, sometimes we're expecting the minister or let's say president to really do everything. Someone is on the ground there who is tasked with the responsibility to do that. That means someone has been sleeping on the job. Now, the minister will come and go, and of course, as my colleague mentioned, just a few days after that, then a child was killed. That is, they're demonstrating the impunity. That, you know, you can come from Nairobi, but we're still going to rule the ground. And therefore, we need to find a local solution. Use intelligence to gather information to who is doing it. This is probably just a bunch of people. There is a chance that some politicians or aspiring politicians within that framework, within that region, might actually be playing a part in it. Now, that should be established. The trouble of, let's say, reacting before you have intelligence is you're actually going to lose potential suspects because you alarm them, you alert them. But in terms of deploying security services, it is not exactly premature per se. It's the manner, I think, in which it was done because it's being done without really sufficient intelligence. However, the optics of having perhaps security people on the ground might help assure some citizens. But I think we need to go beyond that, and we need to make sure that our Nyumba Kumi initiative is more active and not just, you know, exist in name.
Right. Ambassador Erastus Mwencha.
I think you asked a question in your intro as to the way forward, and that's what I want to build on because the gurus who come from the area have spoken. Last week we were talking about expenditure in security, and some of us took the posture that we must focus on where really we are hurting as a country. We are not so much under threat from external invasion, it's actually internal problem. And we must then recognize that with increasing unemployment and politicians trying to outdo each other, they will be able to recruit. We have seen this happen. I mean, the region I come from, we have had something called Chinkororo. But that tells you something that is lacking or something that is happening where the community feels there's a gap and they organize themselves spontaneously. But having addressed that, I want to still emphasize on one point. The security architecture of this country, as Simeo has said, we need to revisit it. And there are three aspects I want to propose. The first one is that we must involve county governments. For whatever reason it was to have this dualism, where county governments have been excluded, I don't know the wisdom of it, but the national government can retain certain level of security that they cannot expose to the county government, but allow the county government also to participate in the security architecture of the country. Then go down the level. That is the only way you can also mobilize and get the community. I've always given an example of Ethiopia, where I lived for some time.
Yes.
And where, in fact, I remember just before I left, we were already talking to Minister Kaiseri to come and have a thorough understanding of why Ethiopia managed security very well. It cannot be imposed from a top. Let the people own it. And I've always said the Nyumba Kumi architecture was not properly approached. It was approached as a security issue, when actually it would have been broadened so that people buy in and work on it. Because as they have rightly mentioned, the issue here is sharing information, so that if the security agents have information, then you can bring security. Because now you bring it, people get scared, they stay mum, and once you withdraw, the whole thing surfaces again, especially when the politicians are involved. So I think let's emphasize on the security architecture. That is the second question I was making, so that we make people to own and participate in security, and not from above.
Right, briefly from Dr. Mustafa as well.
Yeah, Debarl, first of all, we extend our condolences to Malik. I think that's the name of the boy that was killed. And he was basically grabbed from the house as his parents had gone to the mosque to pray, and stabbed. Now, the killers are known, Debarl, or at least those who are masterminding the killings are known, and they are local politicians in that particular area. It is unfathomable that, you know, a group of people would just get into a police station, steal guns, and then return those guns later without knowing who is behind these kind of actions. Now, not only have our politicians become part and parcel of transnational criminal gangs that smuggle gold or sell fake gold, they are also part and parcel of the killings at the local level. I want to ask Matiang'i, the Minister for Security, to not spare these politicians. And if action is not taken, Debarl, on these leaders, then they will feel that they can do whatever they want to do, and they're going to plunge this country into a deeper mess. If Al-Shabaab was, say, Nakuru or Nairobi, killing 15 people, the same day you would see what kind of arrest would be made. Now, the life of that person in Matungulu matters, whether those who are perpetrating the killings are local politicians or Al-Shabaab elsewhere. It's very important that these politicians are brought to book.
Right, thank you. Okay, we want now to buckle down to also what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today, where Kenya is flexing muscle in a row with Somalia. Tit for tat, it says. Let me try and just put that for you. I woke to my touch screen. Today it's really acting up. I don't know why. It's a bit temperamental. But this is the splash today, as you can see it. Kenya flexes muscle in row with Somalia. Tit for tat, a maritime boundary dispute between Nairobi and Mogadishu escalated this week when Kenya turned away a Somali delegation flying in for an EU meeting. But that is just the tip of the iceberg of retaliatory measures already in force. You have the full story on page 4 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, if maybe you're not or none the wiser about this particular dispute, there's some information here. Somalia sued Kenya in 2014 at the International Court of Justice, seeking to redraw the sea boundary as an extension of the land border and thus claim oil blocks. There you go. And also the retaliation, since Somalia refused to withdraw the case and have the matter resolved out of court, Nairobi has responded by freezing certain bilateral agreements. So, and you can see also there is a disputed area here. Kenya wants border to run eastward. This is just a snippet of it. And you can see the line here between Kenya and Somalia. It's given here, disputed area. This is around the Indian Ocean as well. And where it is earmarked, or where you have the red marks there, the drawings, is where we have the dispute that is now simmering to something else. And this proves to be another diplomacy tiff that is now brewing between Kenya and Somalia. Remember also yesterday, the EU opened another embassy that is touted to be the second biggest European Union embassy in Africa. And this delegation also were now not allowed to enter the country as far as this particular dispute is concerned. Officials say they were ambushed with demands for visas by immigration. Let's just put our focus on this, because now this has been it's a long-drawn battle between Kenya and Somalia, and it's still with the International Court of Justice. We would just want to hear from you, the panelists, to tell us, where is it emanating? Where are we headed as far as this is concerned? And was this particular posture by Kenya really called for? Dr. Virunga.
Yes, but I might be lengthy on this one.
You might be lengthy on this one?
On this one. Because I want to look at it in several aspects. One,
let's take it in portions so that we have everyone really, we'll circle back to you.
One, I think Somalia is misbehaving. And for the first time, actually, I've thought of asking Kenya to pull its troops from Somalia, place them at our border. Let Al-Shabaab take over Somalia. Because I think we have sacrificed too much for the Somali people. They've been using Nairobi as their bedroom for a long time. They've been doing business. They've been taking their children to school here. And we are the only country in this region where Somali people have had it free and everything to grow as a nation. Now, for them to turn around and start stabbing Kenya, I think for the first time, I'm looking at Kenya pulling out of Somalia, bring the troops to the border, let's take care of ourselves, let them continue fighting. Because the reason why Al-Shabaab says they're attacking us is because they believe it is Kenya that is making the government in Somalia to survive. And if that is what Somalia can pay back to us, then I think for once, I'm having that feeling that we should just pull out, bring our troops from the initial incursion mission, where it was go attack them, put the troops back to the border, and take care of the Kenyan nation. I think to me, that is where, because this is a serious lack of respect for what Kenyans have done. Our soldiers have died in Somalia because of them. We have spent a lot of money before we headed into AMISOM as a nation, although we are protecting ourselves. But what was happening in Kenya was a manifestation of what was taking place in Somalia, so that revenge is done in our country. And that is very wrong, you know, Debarl. So that is one. Number two, we should not forget that we are where we are today because of our own Kenyan people. And I think the last time I was here, I was very bitter about our Kenyan officials who went to The Hague to deal with this issue. And I don't know whether my colleagues have read. There's a budget now for 1.7 billion for lawyers, the next budget. The former AG spent 420 million.
That is the lawyers to the ICJ.
No, I'm coming there. Yes,
the maritime dispute that we're discussing.
Dispute now.
Yes.
After they bungled, went to The Hague, spent our money, took their per diems, went to the red light district in Amsterdam. They came back and left us with this problem. So they got our money, which is our taxpayers' money. They were paid per diem. They wasted money on second-class tickets. After they came back, the then Attorney General hired, without procedure, international lawyers and paid 420 million Kenya shillings. Now in the current budget, the Treasury has budgeted 1.7 billion for legal services on the same dispute. So sometimes, even as we say Somalia has an issue with us, I still come back to this country where officers are given responsibilities and they don't care what happens to this country. Because this money we are spending on this dispute, if these fellows handled it properly from the word go, we will not be where we are today. But because of that, and they are still serving as we speak, These fellows who went to The Hague are still serving, except the AG who retired, or he was asked to resign. The rest are still serving this government, Debarl. And that is where the jinx of our problems are. Officers given responsibilities in this country, and they don't perform. And they have no qualms. Because right now they are being driven backseat, government GK vehicles, going back home, having their fun, yet taxpayers are spending money on an issue that should have been solved from the word go. So two levels. Yes, Somalia is misbehaving, and I think we need to be very tough on them now. The same way we lost South Sudan after spending so much as a country. The other countries took over. Sudan, South Africa took over South Sudan. Uganda took the lead. Ethiopia was now playing around. The same thing happened to Somalia, but that is a story for another day. But I think as a country, we should not allow Somalia, after doing what we've done for them for so many years, and having their refugees here for many years, for them to start imagining that they can walk roughshod with Kenya. I think, to me, the style could be wrong, but I think we must stand as a nation and tell Somalia,
Thank you.
We've done too much for you. Yeah.
Right. Let's hear from Dr. Tusay on this particular development.
Well, I wanted to react briefly to what Dr. Weronga has just said. And my fear actually is to conflate under the name of Somalis in Kenya, you know, both the Kenyan Somalis and the refugee Somalis. And I think also to drag the people, even the refugees themselves, into this conflict would be doing injustice to them, because these issues really concern the top policymakers. Their decisions, it is true, can have impact and consequences on the local people, but I believe this is an issue that we have to locate where it belongs. If the International Court of Justice in 2014 or subsequent years was unable to solve the problem, I do not believe that we should reject that responsibility to the people, local people. What I want to say is simply that the issue of the oil, say, the borders that is being disputed is also, as we were discussing before, to be reframed as a really national security issue. It is interest of these countries. I believe to some extent, I am cautiously putting this out, Somalia appears to be a failed country. And to that extent, its international image may be really ruined, so much that when Somalia brings a grievance, to the international community, we may tend to dismiss it immediately. But I think it is our responsibilities as policy analysts, as scholars, as policymakers, to say how can we solve this issue without necessarily jeopardizing, the kind of relationship that we want to build for the Africa we want to see, but at the same time without jeopardizing the kind of relationship, between countries. The Kenyan troops in Somalia have been doing a good job, and that job, I believe, is not conditional to, some of, the development of what is going on. It is also for Kenya's national security reasons that the KDF are in Somalia. And until the mission that was defined is fulfilled, I am beginning to, differ with the opinion of pulling out the troops, because this issue can be solved differently, from a different perspective and different approach.
But was the mission defined from the word go? That will be another question that we can come to and find. Was this mission defined? Because I think Kismayo was the ultimate. And I remember a splash that, mission accomplished. That was a splash that we had on Saturday Nation when I think, was it in 2011 or 2012? Yes. Mission accomplished, and we knew this is it. We've captured Kismayo. That was actually the epicenter of it. But now, years later, we're still there. And this probing question about pulling out the troops also is escalating. But this is mixing issues with the maritime, right? So that now we have it clear. Could we just concentrate on maritime? Then we'll come back to you. Runga says no. We'll come back to you. But let's hear from Ambassador Erastus Mwencha.
I'm going to look at it from three perspectives, briefly, on the diplomacy part of it, and the international aspect of it, and then the facts of the matter. On the diplomatic part of it, I was a little worried when I saw that a delegation going to attend an international meeting here in Nairobi was turned back, but I was comforted when I realized that it was not the entire delegation, there was scrutiny, and those who didn't have visa are the ones who were turned away. So let's debunk that so that doesn't look like Kenya has blocked Somalia attending an international meeting. Because Kenya being an international ground for meetings, if even some of the enemies of the US have attended meetings in the US, because you are obligated to open the doors. But what I would also hope that in the process, Kenya would have informed Somalia that those, even if you have a diplomatic passport, you must get a visa on arrival so that you don't inconvenience people that way. I think that is settled. Second one, I want to agree with Brad Dusit that really we cannot pull the troops back. Since we went in, we are in for a game. But as you said, we can come back. We'll come back and visit it. The point I wanted to delve into is the international architecture on the law of the sea. And I will just make bullet points. Mm-hmm. There is, since 1992, an international framework for the laws of the sea. And that framework also established a tribunal. Why was it necessary to establish a tribunal? That is because history had told the world that on matters borders, it is very risky to go to a court. A tribunal gives you flexibility to be able to get a win-win situation. And history has testified to that. You remember the case of Ethiopia and Eritrea. African Union tried to intervene and help them, but they mutually agreed to go to the International Court of Justice, and you saw what happened. Ethiopia was caught in a very awkward situation when actually even Eritrea would say, we can see that this ruling has some deficit, but then the ruling, we had already agreed that the ruling must be implemented in totality. And so it's very risky to go to that court. That's why a tribunal, because a tribunal is less adversarial and you have a chance of winning situation. Having said that, the fact of the matter is also clear that Somalia and Kenya have a history on this. They have already agreed to go to the UN and register the border in line with the law of the sea requirement. And at that time, Somalia, having agreed 2009, registered it as it looks. But of course, they had a caveat there, which says that this does not prejudice a future revisit of the matter. And that's precisely what they're doing. Having moved to this stage, I think now we are in a very awkward situation because even the procedures of the African Union, there is, and I think Werunga has mentioned it, there is border program. There is East African Community that we could have used so that we can solve this problem before it goes to international level. And one would hope that Somalia would think twice, because once you go there, you are now going to get into a very tense situation within him. And I hope wisdom will prevail that there is diplomatic rapprochement between so that we can solve it.
Right. Dr. Kaninje.
Unless we have a visa waiver program with any country, just like when those countries have visa waiver programs, when you get into their airspace or into their country, you land into any of their ports, they're going to expect you to have a visa. Now, some may not perhaps agree sometimes perhaps with the style of Dr. Monica Juma, but one thing I think we can all agree is that she's tough and she loves this country. And she's simply trying to remind the world that we are good neighbors, we're also a country of laws. So I'm not going to go much into that. Now, with regard to the current challenges we face in Somalia, it is tough for Kenya, even on this maritime issue. And I'm not trying to connect the diplomatic incident with the maritime issue we're talking about, because in Kenya, you know who to deal with as a country. Somalia is not as united. You have a president who is partly American, You have a prime minister who is Norwegian. We actually don't know who is calling the shots, whether they are themselves or they are where they live, where they have better citizenship. Most of their families don't live in Somalia. They live out there. And those who live in East Africa, they actually live in Nairobi, Kenya. And so it is a little bit of a challenge for our Ministry of Foreign Affairs to actually find a good partner to deal with because of those divisions between the states, federal states, and, for instance, the government in Mogadishu. It's a challenge. However, and as a second challenge for us, and especially with regard to our role in peacekeeping, and we've also had this from very reliable sources and people with experience on the ground, AMISOM was supposed to be a peacekeeping force. However, what it's doing, it's actually a peace enforcement force because there is no peace to keep. Peacekeeping is keeping peace between two parties. No, they're busy engaging Al-Shabaab, which means peace enforcement. But the terms of reference are still referring to the peacekeeping, which is also limited with regard to actually what you can do and where you can go. Now, that also constrains us in Somalia. Number two, you have other countries as part of AMISOM which are not supposed to be doing certain things, for instance, training personnel and stuff like that. Our neighbors and up north, in Addis Ababa, has entered into a bilateral arrangement actually to be able to do that. And so you find even our partners or neighboring countries within Somalia, we're kind of working at cross purposes. But at the same time, the national government in Mogadishu doesn't seem to really appreciate the role that Kenya has been playing. And I think it's about time we revisit this and see, as Dr. Werunga was suggesting, what should be our mission going forward. Of course, it's easy to start a war. It's never easy to conclude it. And we know, of course, what our interests are. We know our national security interests. We know the stability of Somalia is our national interest. But perhaps we should sit back and start thinking, what would be the best way of going about it? We are having too many issues, and we don't really know who we're dealing with in Somalia. Are we dealing with Americans, Norwegians, or Britons? Because, let's face it, a lot of this crisis and over the maritime border, it's not entirely a Somalian thing. It's also being instigated by interest from the outside. And so as a country and as a region, we should pay attention to that and make sure we actually perhaps reduce that influence. Perhaps that's going to be the only practical way of actually solving this problem. But as long as you're having pseudo people who represent other countries, it's going to be a challenge for us to solve it.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, I just want to pick from where Dr. Kanenje has left, or has said. I think Kenya should be going to Oslo and United Kingdom to discuss this issue of the maritime border with Somalia. I sympathize with the people and the citizens of Somalia because the leaders that they have are not patriotic to their country. They hold multiple citizenship. In fact, even those that were returned with Somalia diplomatic passports, don't be surprised if they appear tomorrow with the Norwegian or British or Canadian or American passports. And you'll be sipping coffee, you'll be seeing them sipping coffee at the Yaya Center at the mall there. The challenge here is, Debarl, first of all, Ambassador Mwencha talked about this. The United Nations laws, a convention on the laws of the seas, UNCLOS 1, 2, and 3, made it very clear and advised that it's very important that countries actually have a tribunal to redress matters maritime border dispute. Going to ICJ does not help at all. And unfortunately, Somalia decided to go in that direction, perhaps at the prodding of or encouragement of some state actors outside of Africa who want to control some of the minerals. And it's not just oil. There's a lot down there on what is being disputed. That's right. Besides the oil blocks, actually, that is. Besides the oil blocks. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot more. Now, for Somalia to have gone to ICJ, there seems to be a plan. The head of ICJ is a Somali. And some of these Western countries are actually calling shots in some of this, whether it's in ICC or ICJ or some of these international courts. The Africa Union policy policy, and Ambassador Mwencha, please correct me if I'm wrong, has always been that we should resolve our border disputes bilaterally and through negotiation, not going through the court. In February, when the problem started, I remember saying that Somalia has made an incalculable error in actually allegedly selling those oil blocks and continuing to stay at ICJ. They need to drop the case at ICJ and come back. Kenya has made serious sacrifices in Somalia. Kenyans have paid the ultimate price in trying to actually protect Somalis from Al-Shabaab. Most of those governments that have been, except the last two, have actually been formed in Kenya and in Nairobi here, and they're given all the facilities, including diplomatic facilities, to actually transact business from Nairobi. They need to respect that, and they need to look at Kenya as a country that has helped them and can work with them. This is not a big issue. These problems have been resolved peacefully, bilaterally, in so many other places, whether it's between Nigeria and Cameroon, Nigeria and Sao Tome and Principe, Philippines, China, that's a little bit troublesome, but between Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, they've been resolved, and I don't see why this challenge should actually go to that level. Let us call on the Somalia citizens to ask questions to their own leaders about this challenge in Somalia.
Thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Burunga on this.
Yes, today I seem to disagree a lot on this Somalia issue. Because one, people go to the US because the UN headquarters is in the US. And the International Convention says any UN body was with headquarters somewhere that belongs to the UN. So you allow them to go. These fellows were coming for an EU meeting. EU is not a UN body. They were not going for this habitat meeting. They were going to the EU headquarters. So Kenya had the right to ask for visas. We must distinguish that. So, Ambassador, this is the difference why I said it's not the same. If they are going to Gigiri, then Kenya had no obligation but to make sure they allow them to go. But these fellows were going for the EU meeting. So that's why they were stopped. So that's the difference. Yes, some presidents in America that does not want to see, but they have to go to the UN headquarters because that's a UN body. If they're going to Gigiri, that's a different story.
But if they were holding diplomatic passports, does it make any discernible difference? Because this is the argument. We were having diplomatic passports, but now we were ambushed.
You know, there's a problem
with the visas. I mean, why then do you have the diplomatic passports?
There was a time I was working somewhere where I don't want to say, but we are also being told holding a diplomatic passport does not mean you are accredited. You must be an accredited diplomat. You know, those are two different things.
No, we cannot establish
no, I don't want to go there.
They're accredited or not.
No, I don't want to go there.
But assuming they were accredited and they are having the diplomatic passports, will that have made any difference?
Yes. If you're an accredited diplomat, then you don't have problems that these people went through. I can be given a diplomatic passport
because
today.
that is their.
Let me just explain.
That is why they're actually taking special umbrage with us.
You know,
they have diplomatic passports,
yes,
but they were denied entry because the Kenyan government is requesting for the visas.
Maybe things have changed. Today, I can be given a diplomatic passport by the government of Kenya. It doesn't mean I'm an accredited diplomat. We must be clear on this one. But I can have a diplomatic passport. So that's my understanding, but it's subject to discussion. But the thing is, this was not habitat. They were going to the EU. This is my understanding. I could be wrong. Number two, we must understand that Somalia refused to go through the tribunal that Ambassador is saying. That's why they insisted to stay at The Hague. If they had accepted to go through the tribunal, I'm sure things will be going a different direction. That's why we are still at The Hague. To me,
Mustafa says maybe they had their vested interest. One of their own, actually, is the president of ICJ.
No, I'm not refusing. That's why I'm saying we cannot say that Somalia... my issue with this is that they refuse to go to the tribunal. So we are at The Hague, whether they have a Somalia president or whatever, because the delegation of Somalia refused to engage into a tribunal. That's why we are sticking at The Hague as we are. Number three, I think this issue of the maritime is not about maritime resources. It's about the boundary. So let's not, we must distinguish these two, the issues about the boundary coming down. And when you look at the boundary coming down the way they want, then you have the continental shelf of 12.5 nautical miles, which Somalia will still have chopped from Kenya. And according to the AU, where our ambassador was there, we are told, and it has not changed, you respect colonial boundaries. Yes. So to me, we must distinguish between the maritime dispute and the boundary we are discussing about. Right. Because if we are coming down, that is a boundary. It's not about maritime. So we need to distinguish, even as Kenya is going to discuss with them, we must distinguish whether we are discussing about the boundary or the maritime dispute within that triangle area. And then you spoke about, I still say, and I could be wrong, we've done our bit in Somalia. But if they're not respecting us, yes, let us pull our troops back.
I'm still...
But on the same...
Yeah, just hold on, yes. Dr. Urungo, because I'm still interested why there is all this hula-baloo on this boundary. If you may just pick it up, full screen. Is it the gradient, and where is actually the oil deposits?
You see the red?
The red is
That
here.
is the disputed area.
That is a disputed area.
Now, what Somalia has done,
yes.
You see those blocks in the red?
Yes.
Those are the areas they want to sell through auction.
They want to auction all
yes.
these blocks.
And
yes.
that's oil block 230,
yes, and that is below the red.
232, 233.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
it's not numbered there.
Not the upper one.
Not the upper one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Kenya says our boundary must go eastwards at 30, that red line.
The red line down.
The upper one.
The upper one.
Yes, the red one.
Yeah.
That one.
That one, okay.
Somalia says we should go the blue.
We should go the blue way.
Yes. So within the blue and the red, you see those blocks that are not numbered.
Yes. All these 218, 219.
No.
Which one? No, which ones?
The red ones.
They're not numbered.
Oh, these ones which are not numbered.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it.
Now, that is where the problem is. Somalia is trying to auction those blocks, and yet it is within the disputed area. And that's where the tiff is between the two countries. Because unless you solve that issue about the east 30 eastwards, and the blue one going down, then you cannot be talking about selling blocks when we are still under dispute.
But
now, that is about maritime resources.
Yes.
But when you look at that blue,
the blue,
and the Indian Ocean, Kenya, you said the Lamu area and the Kionga area, from where it touches the sea, it will still have chopped our 12.5 nautical miles of our continental shelf. Notwithstanding that we still have 450 exclusive economic zone.
Yes.
So to me, we must distinguish, are we discussing about the boundary or the maritime area? And if we agree it is the boundary, then I think, because they have refused to do a tribunal system, we are in The Hague, then we must discuss. Now, on the AMISOM, our initial mission, like you said, as Kenya, it was a unilateral decision. In fact, it was being called an incursion into Somalia. We go, do ABCD, capture Mogadishu, Kismayu. There were some funny things that were to happen with the local warlords and whatever, then come back. But unfortunately, we overstayed, then we rehatted into AMISOM. Now, I want to answer Dr. Hanenje. The initial one, it was being done under Article 7. But when AMISOM came and took over, I think they were given Article 5.
Yes.
Which is enforcing the peace, not keeping the peace. And that is what they are operating under, Article 5. So that is the difference. But I still say, Debarl, we have no problem with our Somali brothers. We read with them, we go to school with them, we eat together. But I think the government of Somalia must be made to understand that good manners is also good politics and is good diplomacy.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe on the issue still that we can actually discuss also since we're talking about AMISOM, we have also CS Juma, who was asking the EU's president, that is Mogherini, to support Kenya in listing Shabab as terrorist organization under the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2012-67. It's surprising that until now it has not been listed.
No, America has listed Al-Shabaab as a terrorist organization.
It has listed Al-Shabaab as a
but not the UN.
But not the UN.
But
the UN.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
The
but
UN
EU
until
is 28 countries. So if EU can list Al-Shabaab as a terrorist organization, it tells you what kind of restrictions are going to be placed on Al-Shabaab because of the 28 countries that make the EU. So the idea is just trying to squeeze the advantage that Al-Shabaab has been having, apart from the US, to ensure that they are squeezed so much that anybody living within the EU states and has any business with Al-Shabaab, then they'll be sanctioned because now it's been declared a terrorist organization.
Right. Let's hear from also Dr. Tusay on this, and maybe also to pick a tweet from Kaikai Kalubusia, who is saying that Somalia conflict is a complex one. The dynamics within the clanism or their clanism itself defeats the AMISOM mission. We don't have any predictable funding for AMISOM. The IGAD is a lame dull dog in solving regional conflict. Kenya soldiers should come back home. That is a question, the problem question about the funding itself. And should we have these people come home? It's going now to almost a decade with our boots on the ground. Yeah, so that's a probing question as well. Which way to go?
Go ahead.
Okay, Hassan Khaneje.
I think you raise an important question. We know that AMISOM has expressed intention to leave
2020.
in 2020. What we are not seeing, and perhaps Ambassador Mwenche may have some understanding of the insights of the AU, what we're not seeing is any effort by the AU or the United Nations to fill up the gap, because the understanding is they're supposed to leave because assuming that the Somali national government has developed sufficient capacity to be able to take care of its peace. We know its capacity right now. There just doesn't seem to be anything concomitant that is following that is actually going to give us the peace of mind. Now, it is true that we've paid heavily in blood and treasure in Somalia. And it is time, as I did mention, for us to re-examine this and our mission in Somalia. But at the same time, if we're going to have another Afghanistan next to our door, or to our doorstep, is going to be extremely dangerous. We're already facing a terrorist threat like nothing we have seen before. And I think as a region and as the international community, effort should be made, because if in fact AMISOM is going to leave in 2020, then I don't know what's going to be left in Somalia except a completely failed state with a bunch of warlords and just full of trouble and full of suffering people of Somalia. Perhaps I'm interested to hear from Ambassador Mwenche in case the AU has any plan in how they're going to do that, because so far I don't see anything from my end.
Well, can I take that invitation?
Yeah, he's actually giving us.
Thank you very much. I think I agree with Werunga on the aspect of this diplomatic row, that even when you have a diplomatic passport, which I've traveled with for the rest of my career, I can't just go to UK because I have a diplomatic passport. I still have to get a visa, even when UK was a former colonial. So, and that's why I said I was comforted that they were coming. The Kenya government leaned on visa, which is a very legitimate position. Having said that, I still would beg to take a different position from Werunga on AMISOM. The reason why Kenya went against the established practices that neighboring countries should not go for peacekeeping in a neighboring country is because of the porous nature of the border. Our security was being compromised, and in fact, if you think about our tourism, almost affected to ground zero. And that's why Kenya took that bold step to go there against these odds. And I would say the mission must stay then until it's accomplished. The one area that I agree with President Trump on this question of exit is when you talk of date-driven and not result-driven dates. Because there must be benchmarks that tell you that now the mission accomplished, come out. Going to finish Al-Shabaab cells in Kismayo is not the benchmark. The benchmark that African Union and the rest of international community, because that mission is established under the UN framework, chapter 6 and 7 and 8. And therefore, it is not strictly a peacekeeping. In fact, there's an offensive part of it. We argued a lot with the UN, because if you look at, for instance, the peacekeeping process that in DRC, they had only a peacekeeping role, and that's why they would just watch people being killed. But the AMISOM has been given an offensive mandate. But having said that, the results that what we achieved, one, is that Somali must control its territory. And that means you must have a security in place. You must have a government that is internationally recognized, among others, and also be able to have that acceptance by the people. None of this has been fully achieved.
Yes.
I mean, still, they have not had proper elections. They are not controlling the territory. If you pull out with this data-driven, the cells will just slip us, and when the data has come and left, they will be active.
But what we're having currently, is it a band-aid solution? That if you say if they pull out, then the sleeper cell will come back. What is the way forward? I mean, to try and make the country secure? Because it seems we're just maintaining the situation itself. Once we pull out, then they'll revert to, you know, where they used to be.
Yes.
I think that's a conversation we need to have. So, to say you want to say something on this?
Just quickly, and again, Dr. Warungu, allow me to come back to what you said. First of all, I have a hard time understanding that kind of separation between the issue of border and the maritime discussion we're having.
I was also having a difficulty on it, so yeah.
Because we wouldn't have a discussion, I mean, the very problem, the maritime problem, if it were not the border, you know, drawing. So the two are really, you know, together to some extent. The second reaction I wanted to have when it comes to the KDF pulling out from Somalia is to say, that way of thinking would be almost like saying we're punishing Somalis by pulling out the troops. It's a retaliation measure because they're not, you know, giving in to say what the maritime issue is. So to link the two could be a big, you know, mistake.
Maybe at this time, it will appear it's very ill-timed for us to pull because they'll see it as a retaliation.
Yes.
Because of what is going on with this dispute as well. But throughout the years, we've never had a solution on this, on when to pull. If AMISOM is pulling away in 2020, then what are we doing then in Somalia as KDF?
Yeah, the question, exactly, that is where lies the question, because it's saying that it is for national security of Kenya that the KDF are in Somali, not related to the issue that we've been discussing about, you know,
sure.
economic, maritimes, and everything else. So until the country has decided we have met the security, you know, security parameters, if you will, then there is no point saying, you know, the troops have to come back because the same problem will still be there. So I think we need really to broaden our, you know, conversation and to say how do we move forward in terms of, you know, steps to be made.
Right. We need to be winding up on this. Are we making headway?
We don't want to pull out only to go back the way Americans did in Iraq.
Yes.
In Syria.
But you see, there's a after 2020, if AMISOM pulls out and Kenya is part of AMISOM, it must pull out.
That's the question, yeah.
It must pull out. Because initially when we were there on our own as a country, we had the liberty to decide when to pull out, how to stay. If AU has decided we are pulling out by 2020 and they stick to that date, Kenya will pull out. Unless they decide now again as a country that we are going to stick there as Kenya.
Not under AMISOM.
Not under AMISOM, then that will do. But again, I want to answer my friend here. It's a nice conversation. Kenya was pinched in South Sudan by demoting our general. It did not take a week. The whole of Kenyan contingent was pulled back. So it depends on how our political leaders want to view these things. I don't think we must stay in Somalia until we believe we are safe. But I'm sure there are some modicums that the government has put in place that even if we pull out, for example, in 2020 by AMISOM, unless they change, our systems in this country have improved. And we saw with Dusit, you could see that was a major change in how we deal with terrorism in the country. So I think all said and done, at some point, we must pull out and come back to our country and see what we can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Debarl, based on the CONOPS, the concept of operations by AMISOM, they're supposed to be, they've worked on an exit strategy which they should pull out by next year. This is next year. They should have pulled out. Somalia is not ready. It cannot, once AMISOM pulls out, Al-Shabaab is going to overrun Mogadishu. That's clear. Now, I don't think AMISOM is going to pull out. I think they will stay on beyond. Even though they say there's an exit strategy, for next year they are not going to pull out for the very simple reason they cannot do that because Al-Shabaab, what they're going to do will just be...
So all along have we been taming Al-Shabaab? That's the question. Because in the long run, that will be the strong excuse.
This is the problem, Debarl. Countries have interest in Somalia, and this is particularly countries that do not belong to Africa, have interest in Somalia, and this is complicating AMISOM, partly complicating AMISOM's strategy there. Now, the beauty about having a multilateral arrangement, that is AMISOM, is that countries can check on each other. If Somalia is going to have bilateral arrangements with Turkey, with whoever from Middle East, things might not become very good. Somalia can even, if they are to do bilateral issues there, they can even decide to have Afghanistan to come and keep peace or work with them to defeat Al-Shabaab there.
Thank you.
What will that mean for Kenya?
Right. We need to wind up now. And yes,
just a point here.
Very briefly, Ambassador.
Yeah, there is no Ambassador Juma was talking to the US, the EU, to go together to the UN to have Al-Shabaab declared as a terrorist group, is to be able to degrade its capacity completely, so that as you are pulling out, you make sure that Al-Shabaab, because then the UN, America may have done it, but if the rest of the world, is obliged to support the UN resolution, then that's broader and that way. But I would still insist, and I think this is what Mustafa said, let us not be fixed on the dates that come 2020 will come out.
Thank you.
Because we may have to go back.
We may have to go back. Lastly, as we're winding up as well, DR Congo has a new prime minister. This is Sylvester Ilukamba. It can be seen here. This was a move that was announced on Monday by presidential spokesman Kasongo Mwema Yamba, who said he was appointed under political agreement between Tshisekedi, that is President Felix Tshisekedi, and his predecessor, Joseph Kabila. Maybe we can also, as a closing statement from our panelists, we can give you a chance also, Dr. to say on this particular development. You know this gentleman, briefly as we're winding up.
Oh, I would say I really don't know him
personally.
Don't know him. I have met him once, just in a, general meeting like this, but we are not very acquainted to him. However, he's a man of consensus, as people say. The Congo has the president, the new president is January. And for the last 4 months, we've been waiting for the government and the prime minister. But eventually, I think Kabila and Tshisekedi have been able to agree on a person who is not a threat to both interests. And Ilunga has a long political career. He's, first of all, an economist trained. He's taught university, Kinshasa, and he's coming from what you call the SNCC, which is the National Service for the Railway in the DRC. So he's been running that for the last maybe 10, 15 years. So he's a man who is known in the services in the country, but he has not been like a very upfront political figure.
Thank you. So, yeah. Right. Your closing remarks, 30 seconds, Dr. Wenunga.
I think on Congo that was a consensus because Kabila has, I think, 340-something members of parliament. Tshisekedi has less than 100 or 141 or something. So I think this delay has been because Kabila was trying to make sure that his interests as a person, that's my view, are taken care of. So when you pick a person like this who is not very well known, then surely you can manipulate and manage the person.
Thank you.
For your interests.
Right. Dr. Hassan Khanenja, 30 seconds.
It will be interesting to see, what happens, especially now with the return of Moise Katumbi, an extremely popular former governor of Lubumbashi. But I would say this, for us to deal appropriately with our regional problems, I think our Minister of Foreign Affairs should be given more money because it is much easier to talk than to fight.
Right. Thank you. Ambassador Erastus Mwencha.
I think let's now see the Prime Minister move to establish a cabinet because the country has huge problems that they need to address, and the government, the President also needs to deliver because he's already lost 6 months.
Right. Finally.
Yeah, Debarl, mine goes to Matungu. Please get those people who have killed those children and people in Matungu and lock them up.
To say, 10 seconds.
In that second, I would say maybe repeat what Ambassador has said. We really look forward to having a functioning government in Congo.
Right, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Also, as a winding up, Radisson Chimwani is saying, have we ever paused to ask ourselves what the local Somali communities want for their nation? Are they contributing, that is, by giving information to authorities about Al-Shabaab? Also, we have Danny Berry lastly saying Somalia's bullish approach to dispute is threatening to throw out the gains made in the once unlivable country and in the process antagonizing our faithful neighbor, Kenya. Somalia is cheating on Kenya. Right, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your contribution as well. And to our panelists, we really want to thank you also for this cogent discussion we've had. We didn't touch on many areas as far as international stories are concerned. US and Iran tension, Malawi election, that will pick up next week. It's still a developing story. Thank you for your valued company. My name is Debarl Inea.